All right, back in the basement again today, and we're going to talk about the Kleva built Genesis jack. This is a piece of equipment I've owned for several years, never really made a video on it, and it is the big brother or the pro version of the Kleva built Genesis jack, which I've made several videos on dating back a long time ago. You might recall the Wolverine costume and the subsequent videos from that. Now, what this does is it takes all of the pros of the Genesis jack and puts it into a full-sized version here. So I upgraded to the full-size version. It's something I use literally every time I deadlift, and I really like it a lot. I thought I'd just share some feelings on it. Now, I'm not affiliated with Kleva Built at all. I don't have a discount code for you. This is just my real-world experience. And the big things I like about this is the fact that, number one, it is extremely lightweight. This thing weighs less than 15 pounds. And despite the fact that it's very lightweight and isn't as big or bulky as some other jacks out there, it makes lifting the weight extremely easy. So, for example, what I have on the weight right here is roughly about 815 pounds or so. There are 7 reds per side. This is still a warm-up for some people like Jamal Browner, which is crazy because I got tired even loading this bar up. You can see right now that there is significant bend in the barbell. So this is a Kabuki PR deadlift bar. It is the most whippy deadlift bar allowed in competition, depending on the federation that you compete in. But it is fully load up, and I'm sure I'll show you some B-roll of that process. But the nice thing with the Genesis jack is it is super simple to unload the bar. There you go, fully unloaded. Genesis jack comes out. As I mentioned, it's really light. It's under 15 pounds. It's made from aluminum and steel. And there's some acetyl stuff on here for the grips, which again, I'll talk about in just a second. But to lift this weight up, which in some cases, like at a powerlifting meet, or if you're lifting yourself, it can get pretty tiresome. And even though things are jacked up and the jack makes it easier, it does get difficult at times when you have this much weight on here. But with the Genesis Jack Pro, I'm gonna sit here and have a conversation with you and still just do it as simple with that as one hand. In fact, if I wanna make this really simple, or at least put some effort into it, I'm gonna 2-finger it. My finger strength, actually, let's try to 1-finger it first. Let me get a really good 1-finger mark in here, and I'm gonna pull. The power of 1 finger. Now I know what you're thinking, Brandon, you got some powerful digits, buddy. You must have played a lot of Nintendo growing up, and that is true, but it's so easy that I can do it. So 1 finger is difficult but easy. 2 fingers, about the same effort. So one of the things, again, the Genesis jack in general, regardless if you're getting the pro version like this or the regular version, it just makes the process of loading and unloading a bar super simple. Now, some things you might notice with this, it's not perfect, however, you might be able to tell, I'll show you some close up, is after use, because of the actual design, because how skinny this thing is and how minimal it is and how lightweight, things like this with the actual arm here, which is a thin piece of like steel, aluminum, it does tend to get a little shaky at times. So obviously I'm overemphasizing it, as I wouldn't be doing this in normal practice, but from just unloading the bar and letting go, you will find that this vibrates some. It's easy to stop. There you go. But just one of those things that you might see and be like, oh shit, look at that. Another thing that I've noticed on this is when not in use, it lives on my deadlift platform. And one of the things that I've seen some people have issues with, and even myself on occasion, as I'm coming here to get bars out of the rack, or my kids are running around and playing in the gym, because this thing works so well loaded, it also works very well unloaded, almost to a fault, because if you bump this thing, it has the tendency to flip kind of easily. Now, obviously, if you're mindful of it, or like me, when not in use, I'll just set it aside here where it's not going to come crashing down. But there was a time in the point in this basement where I didn't have as many bars on here. I only had 6 bars instead of 9. My kid was running by, hit this thing, and it was right at the right angle where this shifted down and actually put a hole in my drywall, which I did a terrible job patching up because, to be honest, I didn't really care that much. I'll show you some B-roll of it. But just note that this thing can move around some, again, because of how lightweight and how well it works. Another potential negative thing of this is, which is also positive, depending on how you're looking at it, is the width of this jack is wider than most other jacks out there. The nice thing about that is if you're using a very whippy bar and loading a lot of weight, like in this case, the Kabuki PR deadlift bar, and in this case, like 800 pounds of weights on here, a shorter jack, what happens is as that bar starts to flex, as weights are loaded onto it, you'll find the weights actually touch the floor much sooner or get closer to the floor much sooner than on a longer jack, because again, the heads of this jack are more towards the collars. There's less room to actually bend. Now, I will say that even with this one, it's not necessarily completely free of that problem. Loading on the last plates in this instance, which was a 7th red, did have a little bit more of a struggle because again, the way that the bar was pointed down, but I have noted that this jack does a little bit better because it's wider than something that is brought in. Now, an easy fix to that, if you really wanted to, is just when you're jacking the bar up, is just to put it towards more one side. And what you'll note is that it does not bend as much on that end. The problem then, of course, is while this end will be much more straighter with less bend, this end will be bending even more. So you're going to have to take it out and readjust. I'd rather just put it in the center because, let's be honest, I'm not deadlifting this anytime soon. Another potential con, however, of it being wider is if you're the type to deadlift in a rack, and yes, people do, especially if they're doing things like rack pulls or band pulls or something like that where they need to set up a bar inside of a jack. Maybe you're just limited on space. I don't know. This is wider than most commercial racks, so this will not fit in between your uprights. Some people will view that as an issue. In that case, you're probably going to want to get either a smaller jack or maybe even look at just the regular Genesis jack and lift one side at a time. The last con I'm going to talk about before I talk about, again, some more pros, because I just want to get this things out there of people that might be looking at this, is the price. It lists for $290. It's expensive. It's twice as expensive as most other jacks, unless you're looking at things like from Go Strong or one of those high-end bougie brands. $290. I do think it's worth it based off how often I use it and the benefits and features it provides. If you don't care about those benefits and features, you're probably better off just using like a 5 or a 2.5 pound plate underneath and doing it yourself, because why would you spend $100 on something when you can use the plates you already have? But overall, I really like this. I mentioned already the way that it works very similarly to the Genesis jack, which again, I've done very praiseful videos on. The handles, the grips, everything makes this super easy. It's super lightweight. It doesn't take up a lot of room, so I can just kind of tuck it away. And at the end of the day, it does what it's supposed to do, but it does it better than other things on the market. So if you're interested, give them a look. If you have any questions on this, let me know in the comment section below. In the meantime, as always, thanks for watching and stay big.